There we go. Okay, hi everyone. Welcome today. My name is Marnie Dow. I use the pronouns she, her, and hers. And on campus, I serve as the Assistant Director for Student Involvement, which means I spend my time really focused on supporting our student organizations and our student organization leaders. And so we're really excited today for the last of our monthly RSO developmental workshop series. It's actually the last one of the semester, so that's exciting. And we have a really great guest presenter today. This is Justin Gomez. He serves as the Assistant Director for Career and Professional Development at the Career Center. And so I will just pass it over to Justin and let him get started. You're still muted. Justin, you're still muted.
Oh, I just wanted to confirm they're not going to be able to speak, only chat. Okay, all right. So yes, hi everyone. I'm really glad to be here with you all to talk about how you translate your RSO experiences into practice. And essentially, it's an opportunity for you all to be able to take what it is that you are doing and you are learning in your RSOs in those organizations and being able to take that out into an internship or into the workforce. Today's session isn't going to be so much me kind of information dumping on you and giving you a lot of information. I really want to make this useful to you or as useful and tailored to you as possible. I'm going to ask that on your end, since you're not going to be able to unmute and share with me, if you could just please in the chat right now, let me know what are some things that you are hoping to learn in this workshop today. So if you wouldn't mind just taking a couple minutes and just sharing in the chat, what are some things you're hoping to hear about or learn about today, or maybe even letting me know where you are in the job search process, etc. Oh, I can also see the chat. I didn't realize that. All right, so Jonas said he is hoping to learn how to talk about his experiences on resumes and in interviews. Anyone else? What are you hoping to learn, or what are your priorities for being here today? Yes. So I won't, I'll let you go ahead and continue entering those in the chat, and I'll talk a little bit about what we mean by experience. So typically, when you are going into the internship process, you're going in the job search process, you'll hear the word experience come up a lot. You'll hear it also when you're putting together a resume, your personal statement for graduate school. You're going to hear this thing about, well, tell us about your experiences. And I think really when employers, people in graduate school, committee reviewers, what they're looking for in terms of experience are what are some of the skills that you have been able to develop over the time that you've been in college or over the time that you have spent being involved in your RSOs and all of the things that make up what it means to be a college student, right? And so when I think about experience and skills being sort of this equivalent thing, it's thinking about everything that you can develop and apply to different aspects of your lives. So skills you could develop through education. So that's essentially any of your degree programs that you're in is going to allow you to be able to develop skills that are specific to a discipline. But you can also develop skills and experience through internships, through volunteering. Some of us are in RSOs that are very volunteer focused and more about giving back to communities and giving back to others. There's also jobs. It could be student jobs that you have. There's also things on campus that you could be involved in that are paid. Careers and even leisure activities, or these could be hobbies, essentially is what I'm saying. can allow you to be able to develop some of these experience and skills. So today what we're going to be doing is essentially exploring what are some of the top skills that employers are sort of asking for. And not just employers, but also colleges and universities. What are those skills? What are those experiences that they have sort of agreed on that these are things that are sort of universal and that we want all students who are graduating, et cetera, to be able to have. So I want you to be able to identify what those are for yourself, and then maybe think and reflect on how these are going to be able to help you to achieve whatever your career goals are. Okay. All right. So any questions about what I've just talked about?
We got one comment that came in saying that someone hopes to learn some skills that they can develop and incorporate into their RSO today.
Okay, awesome. All right. And, if at any point you have any questions, please feel free to ask, type them into the chat. This is your opportunity. You have a career coach here. So even if it's not entirely relevant, but if you have any questions related to career and professional development, please feel free to ask those. All right. So now that we've sort of established what we mean by experience and kind of matching that or aligning that to developing skills, I want to talk about the three types of skills that one could develop. So the first one is what we call transferable skills, and essentially transferable skills. These are what I call skills that are based on your natural talents and abilities, things that you find yourself just kind of doing and engaging in when you don't have necessarily a requirement to be able to do it. So for example, a transferable skill for me would be the fact that I can cook. And while I don't necessarily work as a chef, while I don't necessarily work as a cook, I don't work anywhere in the food industry, well, at least not anymore. It's a skill that I could essentially take if I decided I wanted to be able to go back into working in the food industry. I could essentially take those skills and be able to do it. But also when we think about transferable skills, we think about things that might be transferable to different career fields and work functions. So for example, here today, I'm using a transferable skill of public speaking. So I'm using this as a career coach, but I also use this in my side hustle as somebody who does training and facilitation. In addition to that, if I'm doing any type of community or volunteer work, public speaking becomes a skill that I'm using across all of these different things, whether I'm getting paid for it, whether I'm volunteering. So public speaking would be a transferable skill. It's also something that I find very natural and that I enjoy doing. So always doing that. The next one, then beyond transferable skills, would be knowledge-based skills. And these are ones that you specifically develop through education, training, and hands-on experiences. So for example, a knowledge-based skill that I have is perhaps being able to use Canva or being able to use Panopto or something like that, or even like Microsoft PowerPoint, which are things that allow me to be able to create presentations. So these aren't things that I just naturally was able to do. I mean, maybe for some people it might come to them naturally or easy, but this is a more knowledge-based skill. Like I had to learn how to use Microsoft PowerPoint, and then not just learn how to use that, but how to develop an effective presentation or being able to facilitate training by using this tool. So I developed that sort of as a knowledge base. And then lastly, there's personal attributes that are just characteristics that you develop throughout your lifetime. So let's say, for example, these could be things like being able to be punctual, right? Or being able to manage a project, being able to complete something. I often tell people that that's actually one of the skills you develop by completing your college degree, is that you learn how to complete something, take it from point A essentially to point B. And so leadership is also another one, communication, teamwork. Some of those are the kinds of personal attributes that you will develop throughout your lifetime. Like there's not a final point, meaning like I'm not necessarily an expert in this, but it's something that I will continue to learn, grow, and develop throughout your lifetime. So those are sort of the types of skills. Any thoughts, questions, or comments on these? Okay, hearing none, then we're going to transition into the next part of our workshop or activity today, and we're going to be doing a skills inventory. So for you to be able to do this activity, um, just have a notebook handy or something that you can write on. So if you know, hopefully you have a pen or something, or you could even on your computer open up a Word document or Google Doc in order for you to be able to take notes as we go through this activity. As I mentioned, this is going to be very personal to you. So you're the one who's going to be sort of taking inventory of what skills you have. So what I'm actually going to do in the chat is before I get started, is I'm going to share a link to a PDF with you all, and it's going to show you the NACE, which NACE stands for the National Association of Colleges and Employers. And luckily for us, they actually updated what their career readiness competencies were right before this workshop. So I had to make a slight adjustment in how I was doing this activity today, just because they have new career readiness competencies. So the way that we're going to go through it today is I took some of what they had on there and I sort of tailored it to what it would be like to be involved in an RSO as either a leader or as a member, and will allow you to use that information to kind of take inventory of your skills. Again, given the virtual format, I wanted to make sure that you also have that in PDF to be able to refer to as we go through this activity today. Okay, so the first one on that list in terms of skills or core category of skills has to do with career and self-development. And essentially this is about how you are able to understand yourself, what your career goals are, and be able to find the types of personal and professional learning that's going to help get you there. So it means that you understand what your professional strengths are, what your areas of professional growth are, and that you can essentially understand the nature of work and career in the United States, maybe even globally, but essentially understanding what it takes for you to be able to take advantage of career opportunities and also how you can build relationships within and without your organization. So this one I think can be super relevant to what you do in RSOs, because being involved in these organizations um, can allow you to, one, develop relationships within your organizations, but RSOs also give you the opportunity to sometimes connect with other RSOs on campus or work with campus departments or even maybe community organizations as well. So um, I want you to take a couple minutes and I want you to reflect on some of these skills that you might be developing in terms of career and self-development in your RSO right now. So this is where that notebook comes in very handy. I want you to think about which of these things you are currently doing. Maybe you're not doing them, or maybe you're doing some of it, but you still need to work on. So the first one might be is, how do you understand how your RSO involvement, whether you're a leader in that RSO or a member, connects to your career? The second one would be, do you understand how to advocate for yourself and others in the RSO? Do you treat your RSO duties and position as a professional role? Meaning that you're treating this almost like if you were in a paid position or in an internship and using it to further your career goals. Can you establish, maintain, and leverage personal relationships with the people in your RSO on a professional level? Meaning that, yeah, there's some people you might be friends with, but also that in your organization, you treat people as colleagues. Like, we're here together in this organization, we're trying to further its mission, we're trying to further its vision, and I understand the nature of that relationship. And then lastly, I volunteer to participate in training or events that support my career development. I think today, everyone who's in this room can check that box, because you all have volunteered to participate in this training and event that's helping to support your career development. So I'll take just a minute and let you reflect on where you are in terms of developing these skills. This is also not an exhaustive list. Again, that PDF that I shared with you also includes some of the other demonstrated behaviors that are associated with career and self-development. You don't have to type it in, Adam. Just write it down for yourself in your notepad or in your Google Doc, whatever it is that you're using to take notes today. Again, it's important that you write it down because the second activity after we get through the skills inventory is going to be sort of a reflection / action planning for you all.
Hey, Justin, while they're writing things down, I have a question on here that I think you could really expand on while they're doing this activity. You talked really briefly about the idea of treating your RSO members and other leaders as professionals and sort of more in a colleague way than as friends way. And I think that's something, in my conversations with student org leaders, that is often one of the biggest stumbling blocks is, you might join a student organization because it's fun and you like the other people and as a way to meet people, and you see them you see the other people in that organization first as friends, which that's great. And also, can you maybe expand on that idea of seeing the other people in your organization as colleagues and how you can use that as a way to gain skills that you're going to need when you move into a more professional role?
Yes, excellent question, Marnie. So yeah, I think essentially the skill that you're really practicing and honing there is learning how to manage dual relationships. And it was something that at one point in my career, I had not even just a dual, but sort of I don't even know what the three to dual would be, like a trual, I don't know. But I had a relationship with someone where I had three different relationships with them. And let me describe it this way. I was their supervisor, meaning that they were a graduate assistant and then I was their supervisor. We were also in the same master's program together. So they were my classmate in some of my classes. And then we were also friends, like we had a personal relationship outside of that. So for me, I had to remember that sometimes, and I had to be very transparent with the person that I was supervising, and I had to say to her, like, I'm giving you this feedback today as your supervisor. This is not in the context of us being friends. This is not in the context of us being classmates. But as your supervisor, here's feedback that I'm giving to you. And then obviously on Fridays, we would go to Noche Caliente and dance and have fun and do that kind of stuff because we were friends. And I at least would not talk to them about work because that wasn't the nature of our relationship then. And then obviously when we were classmates, we would get to collaborate, work on group assignments and do different things. So essentially, I think that's what Marnie was asking about. And the RSO can really be an opportunity for you to learn how to manage those dual relationships because, yeah, when you go into the workplace, sometimes you end up working with people that you become really great friends with. You might end up going to their house for dinner. They might end up coming to your house for dinner. You might go out to coffee. You might do things together. And so that's okay. There's nothing wrong with being friends with people, but it's also understanding that we do have professional responsibilities and that we have a job to do too. And so it's about understanding and drawing boundaries and approaching people and being honest and just say, hey, this feedback or this meeting we're about to engage in is going to be focused only on the organization. It's not going to be, I'm not sharing this feedback as a friend or I'm not doing this as a friend. So I hope that helps. Yeah.
Well,
Awesome. I see your question, Adam. So I would say what this advocating for ourselves and others in the RSO would be, it's that advocating for yourself would be that you know how to ask for something when you need it, right? So let's say, for example, our RSO is planning an event, but the event or the date that they're planning on doing it is not necessarily going to maybe you don't have enough funding to make it come to life. So this means that, you're like, okay, I'm going to go to CSUN or I'm going to go to a department, to an academic department and ask them if they have funding or something that could help you all be able to bring your event to life, for example. But that would be advocating on behalf of others because by you being able to ask for something, it'll not only benefit you as a member or leader in that organization, it'll benefit everybody else who's going to participate in that event. So it's not so much about delegating, it's more about being able to recognize when you need something and being able to ask for that for yourself or being able to ask for that on behalf of others. So that's what we mean by, and that's going to be super important for you as you think about your own career and self-development, is that many times the things that you need to learn and grow as a professional aren't always given to you. Sometimes you have to ask for them. So I think an example of this would be, I moved from being an individual contributor in my last job to now being in a supervisory role. So I became a manager. And now all of a sudden, um, the way that I go about things has had to shift because the way that I do them on my own is not necessarily the way that works best for the people that I'm supervising. And so I have to not only advocate for my own professional development, but I also have to advocate for theirs so that they can also grow as much as I can. So that's essentially how I think about it. All right, so I'm going to make sure we move on because time is going on and we have 7 more of these to get through. So the next one is communication, and this one is super important because I think you ask anybody as students or you even ask anybody out in the work world, they're going to be like, if there's one thing that you could improve about how you work in the workplace, they're going to say communication. Because miscommunication is probably one of the most problematic, most frustrating things to experience when you're in the workplace or even when you're in an RSO. So this is about being able to clearly and effectively share information, facts, ideas, perspectives with people in your organization or without, which is why Communication 101 or Public Speaking 101 is a fundamental course as you're going through a degree program because communication is just so important. So as you think about your communication skills, you really have to ask yourself, can I communicate in a clear and organized manner so that others can effectively understand me? And so this is essentially thinking back to those principles that you develop in your Communication 101 course, because honestly, that gives you a way to be able to structure your thoughts, ideas. So being able to bring that into your RSO and then being able to use it effectively there, improve it, and then taking it into the work world is going to be super valuable to you. Another part of this is, can you ask appropriate questions to gain clarity from your fellow RSO leaders or your club advisor or RSO advisor? So if there's ever something that's unclear to you, do you know and can you respectfully ask and say, hey, are you able to repeat that? Or could you explain that to me? What is it that you're trying to get at? Uh, in terms of communication too, it's you know how to ask for help from your colleagues, and especially when you need guidance or support with an assigned task or responsibility. Maybe you have been tasked with putting together a flyer and you're like, oh my gosh, I've never put together a flyer before. So am I able to recognize that and can I ask for help in a way that ensures that I get help? Then the other piece is, can I adapt my verbal, nonverbal, and written communication for different audiences, right? So there are some place, for me, there are, obviously when I'm working with students or when I'm doing coaching, my verbal communication is definitely going to have more of a professional tone versus when I'm at home having a conversation with my partner and my dogs and my cats, definitely having a different communication style with them. I might yell at the dogs. No, I'm just kidding. But that's not necessarily the way that I might get across doing something when I'm working with others. Also, my written communication, the way that I write over email is definitely, I always try to strive for how could I be most clear in my communication without being wordy. Meaning, like, I know people are busy, so I'm not going to send them an essay in an email. I personally, I try to keep it 3 to 5 sentences. I'm like, if it's going to take more than 3 sentences to send this email, I might as well give you a call and let's talk about it. So understanding when it's better to send something over email versus when it's better to have a conversation with someone. My philosophy personally is that the only thing that goes in email is information or praise. Those are the only things that go in an email. If I have to give somebody critical feedback or have a difficult conversation, it's better for me to have that with them in person or over the phone or over Google Meet, given that we're in COVID-19 land still. Then it's, can you listen to understand? Meaning like you're not just listening to answer the person's questions, but you're listening to understand their perspective, maybe why they're asking that question, where they're coming from. And then lastly, are you able to persuade and influence your RSO colleagues? Like if you think that there's a certain course of action that needs to be taken in the best interest of everyone, am I able to effectively communicate that and say, hey, here's the why I think we need to take this course of action. Again, think back to Monroe's motivated sequence, think back to those persuasion skills you might have learned in Communication 101. All right. So hopefully you had some time to reflect on that. The next one is going to be critical thinking, which is about being able to respond to needs upon an understanding of the situational context and being able to logically analyze relevant information that's presented to you. So I don't think that there's any job or industry or field you're going to go into that does not require you to be a critical thinker. And so this is another essential skill that you can develop in your RSO. So this one, some kind of skills for you to think about and where you are in terms of developing these is, can you make decisions on behalf of your RSO and you use sound and inclusive reasoning? Okay, so what I mean by inclusive reasoning here is that you can understand the people who are in your organization and understand that if you make a decision, how it's going to be able to impact them, and hopefully that it's going to impact them in a positive way. The other one is, do you know how to solve problems that arise in your RSO? That is a way for you to be able to flex your critical thinking. Can you anticipate challenges, but also opportunities? And can you develop action steps to, one, address those challenges and opportunities ahead of time? Can you interpret and understand data, right? So if you send out a survey and you're asking your RSO members for feedback or information, do you know what questions you're asking, how that's going to help you, and be able to apply it to whatever it is that you're hoping to use that information for? And that's going to be something that you end up using in the work world too. You might be asked to do a listening session or do a focus group or put together a survey and be able to collect information. Then lastly, can you rationalize and communicate a course of action on behalf of your RSO to your stakeholders? So let's say you're in the leadership group and you all decided, you know what, we are going to transition to having our meetings in person 1 week and then virtual the other week. So you're going to be switching in and out. So are you able to explain to your club members that as leaders, you think that this is the best way to go about, this decision that you've made and how you think is going to help and benefit others? So that's essentially critical thinking. And then again, if you have any questions about these as I'm kind of going over them, and as you are reflecting on them for yourselves, just feel free to let me know in the chat. All right, next we're going to talk about equity and inclusion, which has become a really sort of more salient topic. I think it's been salient for quite a while, but even more so, equity and inclusion has become more salient nowadays. And so any job that you're going into, you can guarantee that they're going to ask you a question about your understanding of diversity or your understanding of inclusion. Even when you're applying to graduate school, sometimes they're asking you to put together a statement of your commitment to equity and inclusion. So this is a skill, again, that in an RSO, you're able to begin sort of honing in terms of developing an awareness, an attitude, knowledge, skills required for you to be able to engage with people who you consider different than you. So this could be people who even locally or globally are from different cultural backgrounds, and you can engage in what we, or as NACE is calling it now, anti-racist practices that are challenging systems, structures, and policies of racism. This is huge. Like I mentioned, in my side hustle, this is the level of work that I do consulting with companies who are trying to become more equitable and inclusive. And the last thing that they want is to not have people who understand how important this might be to their bottom line, but also for them to understand how it is that they go about treating people in their organization, essentially. So here are some of the things for you to think about in the RSO context that can help you develop and grow this particular skill area. Do you solicit and use feedback from the multicultural perspectives in your RSO? And I think particularly in this area, this might be something that as I'm going through this, you might be like, whoa, we have never even talked about this in my RSO, and that's fine. That kind of gives you an idea that this is something that we might need to work on as well. Do you actively contribute to equitable and inclusive practices in your RSO? And this becomes super important. I can give you an example right now of something that I'm going through. I was trying to bring a resume tool to campus, and the company that I was working with, actually, the software is great, but it's not accessible for people who have disabilities. and that becomes an issue, right? So I have to recognize that, yeah, I don't have necessarily a disability that would prevent me from being able to use this software, but other people might. So sort of being in this area, I want to make sure that I don't create something that's going to further exclude people or limit people to being able to use it. So this kind of goes to the second point is, do you know how to advocate for inclusion, equity, and justice for historically marginalized communities? Are you currently doing this through your RSO? Because if you're doing it through your RSO, then it becomes easy for you to be able to talk about that work that you've been doing when you go in for an interview, or being able to put that on your resume if that's going to be something that they're looking for. Do you seek out cross-cultural interactions and experiences that help you to understand people who are different than you, right? So understanding that people in different parts of the world, maybe even here locally, different organizations tend to go about things very differently than you would. And so do you seek to understand others? Can you identify resources to eliminate barriers in your RSO that might result from racism, inequities, and biases? So this is also another one that's super helpful, because once you go into the workforce, these are also things that employers nowadays, companies are going to be looking at, is whether you have an understanding of their market base, their consumer base, their client base, their even, again, the workforce, the people who work in that organization might be experiencing. And then can you address systems of privilege that limit opportunities for members of your RSO that are from historically marginalized communities? So I used to be an advisor for a club that was called Women in Business. I was a co-advisor. Yeah, I know I don't identify as a woman, but I was a co-advisor for them. And they came and asked me about, what are some of the ways that they could be more inclusive in their organization? I said, well, look around your organization. And as you think about people who identify as women, who's missing from your organization? Who are the majority of your members, right? And so they're like, oh, well, 95% of people who are in our organization are white women. So I'm like, okay, well, that gives you an idea of what are the things that are preventing women of color, Black women, Latina women, trans women from being part of your organization. And then maybe think about what are some of the ways maybe that you're not including them, like who have been the guest speakers that you have invited to your club to speak? Have they all been white women? So then that might communicate directly or indirectly to others that maybe this group is not for people of color, etc. So it's kind of recognizing those things and thinking about how could I be better and improve that now, so that once I get into the workplace, that those kind of become, I can approach my work in an equitable and inclusive mindset. And believe me, organizations are spending millions of dollars on working to improve this. So one way that you can set yourself up as a candidate is to come in and say, I have an understanding and I have experience of creating equitable and inclusive experiences. You don't have to have all of these things here, but at least if you're thinking about them and working on them, it'll definitely help to get you a little bit further. All right, next is leadership. I wanted to talk about this one. This one I think is easily fits into RSOs. And this is just whether or not you're able to recognize and capitalize on personal and team strengths to achieve organizational goals. So here are some of the things I want you to think about in terms of how you're developing your leadership skills. Can you motivate and inspire others under a shared vision? So this one easily translates to you being a leader in an RSO. It's that if we are this club and this is what we are trying to accomplish, then can you get everybody else who's involved in the organization, leaders and members, to be able to want to also accomplish this thing? Do you seek out feedback and resources to help you support a strategic direction? So let's say you want to increase the membership of your organization by 30%. Well, what are the things that you need to learn, know, and have in order to make that happen? The other one is, can you use design thinking or other models of innovative thinking? And so this is really helpful as a leader, because sometimes you don't just have to motivate and inspire others to follow a vision, but you have to create the vision together with them. And so design thinking or other models like it can really help you in that way. Do you serve as a role model to others in your RSO? Meaning, like, does your RSO have a buddy or a mentor program established? Or are there other ways in which you serve as a role model? Like, do you connect and meet with new members and help them get acclimated to the organization? Those become super helpful when you get into the workplace. One day you'll be a new employee, but you might also someday be a senior employee who's helping other people to be able to onboard and get into an organization. Super helpful to start working on those skills now. Are you able to encourage others and help to build mutual trust? I have seen that, RSOs fall apart when people aren't able to get each other encouraged and there's no trust in the organization. The same thing happens when you go out into the work world. If you can't really build mutual trust, and that's fundamental to people being able to work together cohesively and effectively, then you're going to face some challenges there. So maybe start flexing this particular skill. And then the other one that's super important for leadership is being able to complete things. Not necessarily in a perfect way, but that you can get it done. You can make things happen essentially. So thinking about this as sort of a project management skill, which is sort of one of the big skills out there that they're looking for. But can you plan, initiate, manage, complete, and evaluate projects? So Google is even offering this free project management certificate program through Coursera that you could do. I don't have a link to it, but right now, but feel free to check that out. Google's actually offering quite a few free certificates that you can earn. So you might want to check out that one. But in terms of leadership, being able to complete a project is a super helpful skill to have. All right, let me just take a quick sip of something here, and then while you are continuing to do your inventory. So the next one is professionally. Yes, Adam, what I'll do is when I get to the end, I'll go and I'll find the link and I'll share it with you all. But I can't remember exactly what it's called, but there's Google certificates that they're offering. But I'll look it up and share it later. All right, so the next skill category we'll talk about is professionalism. And this is knowing how work environments differ and understand what are effective work habits that are going to benefit a larger community or workplace. So this is, again, your RSO is a phenomenal sort of proving or testing ground for developing your professionalism. So this one is, do I maintain a personal brand that is in alignment with my RSO and career goals? All of us have a personal brand. Whether we actively work on it or not, we have a personal brand. And whether you know it or not, we know other people's personal brand because we talk about people. We're like, oh my gosh, that person is always late. That's probably me that they're talking about because I'm on island time half the time. So I'm always rushing between meetings. And, some of my colleagues, I know them as the people who are always on time. Like they'll be joining a virtual meeting like 15 minutes ahead of time. So again, whether or not you're working on your personal brand, you have one. And so you want to make sure that whatever you want your brand is, that's in alignment with, who you're representing in an organization, but also how that aligns with your career goals. Most importantly, I think being an RSO is like, you have to be present, you have to show up, and you have to be prepared. So that's one that I think is pretty easy. Is like, am I showing up to the meetings? Am I showing up to all the things that I'm committing to? And am I prepared to do my best and bring my best when I'm there? Am I able to prioritize and complete tasks to be able to accomplish my RSO goals? Do I consistently meet or exceed expectations? Do I pay attention to detail and try to reduce my rate of error? And I can admit when I have failed or made a mistake. I'll admit that one is hard for me personally, but I'm working on it. But it is one in your RSO that you could definitely work on. Is like if you didn't follow through on something, etc. Admitting that you made a mistake. All right. Other skills category area is going to be in teamwork. And this is, are you able to build and maintain collaborative relationships to work effectively toward common goals? And can you leverage diverse viewpoints and shared responsibilities? So some of the skills here for you to reflect on are, can you collaborate with others to achieve a common goal? Can you build strong working relationships with your colleagues? Can you manage conflict effectively? And this one is super important because I think it's one of the interview questions that people struggle with the most. When you get asked, how do you manage conflict or how do you handle conflict? And then, the little SpongeBob thing happens to you where like your brain is on fire and you're trying to think about what do I say? Like I avoid conflict. Well, that's definitely not the answer that you want to go with because conflict is inherent to working with other people. As long as you're working with other people, even if it's your best friend, conflict is going to arise. So Being in an RSO gives you an opportunity to be able to sort of prototype and test out what are ways that you can effectively manage conflict. The other one is, can you tolerate ambiguity? And this one is going to be super important. And this is part of the reason why people hate group work. Because they're like, oh, I'm going to have to carry the whole group, or, somebody's not going to show up on time. Somebody's not going to do something. So your ability to learn how to deal with this environment that's ambiguous in terms of who's going to be able to do what. So essentially the way you work on this is by being more assertive. And what I mean by assertive is like being clear about who is doing what, who's taking what, when they're doing it, and being able to have a tolerance for that, because you can't always know what people or how they're going to do things. The other one is, can you compromise and be agile? So let's say that you had an idea, but maybe the group isn't 100% sold on that idea. Are you willing to compromise? Are you willing to say, okay, well, maybe we don't need to go that direction, but am I willing to say, okay, well, maybe we'll do this and that, and not either or. Then the other one is, do you take time to understand and follow up without interrupting others? So meaning like when somebody's speaking, like you let them speak, share their idea, and then, you don't necessarily interrupt them. Again, this is one I'm still working on too, because sometimes I feel like I have such a great idea, I just want to be able to share that. And so I have to constantly remind myself to like just sit, listen, pay attention, and instead of just trying to respond to what they're saying, really think about that perspective, where they're coming from. All right, and then the last one we're going to touch on today is super important, because this is 2021, and we need, again, what I tell people, it's not necessarily setting you apart when you put Microsoft Office under skills on your resume anymore, because the expectation is that in this day and age, everybody knows how to use Microsoft Office. But either way, understanding and leveraging technology is a super important skill that for you to have in 2021, particularly in life after COVID. Understanding how to use technology to be more efficient and to accomplish goals is going to be helpful for you. There's not a lot here. There's more on that PDF that we shared, but these are the 4 that I thought would be most helpful for you all to reflect on today. And that is, do you use new technologies to improve your RSO? And then second to that would be, are you able to navigate change? So maybe there's a new leadership group coming in, and instead of using Microsoft Excel, they want to use Google Sheets, or maybe instead of using Google Chat, they want to use Slack or Basecamp or something like that. Are you able to kind of navigate changes in technology? Can you identify appropriate technology for a specific task? Is Adobe Photoshop versus Canva versus Microsoft Publisher, and I don't know who uses Microsoft Publisher anymore, but either way, are those the software that's going to be able to help you accomplish that task? And you understand that. And then also, can you use technology to improve your efficiency and productivity? And here's where this is going to come up. You might be in an interview someday, and they're going to ask you, can you tell me how you organize and prioritize your work? In this day and age, things that need to be happening or coming up in your answer is that you use the calendaring tool on your phone, that you use different types of to-do lists to kind of help you stay on track. So those are just some of the things that you can think about. One of them, tools, technology that I use to help me schedule and do things, is Calendly. So I use that in my personal life. I use that at work to schedule workshops. I use it in a variety of different ways, because it just reduces the amount of back and forth that needs to happen when you need to schedule something. So, all right, so those are all the things. I hope that you had a chance to kind of inventory these and think about where you are. Because what we're going to do now is we're going to have you review your results. So I want you to take a couple minutes, and I want you to think about, based on everything that Justin has covered so far, what are your top 5 skill categories or competencies? So I'm talking about the big 8 we just covered. So there were career and self-development, there were communication, teamwork, equity and inclusion. So of these 8, which do you believe to be your top 5? So take some time and write that down for yourself, what you think your top 5 are. And then Marnie, this is a great time. If you have any questions or anything that you think I missed, feel free to let me know so I can go over those.
I always have questions. Always. So I always like to jot down some questions that I have while a speaker's talking, because I think I like to kind of figure out how does this apply to a lot of different student organizations. And so one thing I think can be a stigma with some employers. I'm not sure all employers always see RSOs for the weight and heft that they truly are, about the real time commitment, about the work that goes into them. And there is sometimes a little bit of a stigma, oh, well, it's just a club. So maybe are there any ways, tips or things that you can give to students about how do they speak about their RSO experiences and tell their RSO stories in a way that doesn't minimize them as, you know, kind of at just a club, that these are real professional, pre-professional experiences that will transfer into a professional role?
Of course. Excellent question, Marnie. So I would say the ways that you really professionalize your role in the RSO experience is going to be by developing a portfolio for yourself. So what I recommend to students is, in this day and age, you have to have an online presence. So you have to have a LinkedIn profile. You should have a personal website for yourself. And on that website, you can put samples of work that you've done. If you've been involved in a big event, like you helped to plan a conference for your RSO, even if it's a small event and you invited a guest speaker onto campus and you had 20 or 30 people attend, those are things that you want to be able to showcase. And maybe you can't always put everything on your resume, but if you have a website and you have pictures of you meeting with the governor of Nevada, or the CEO of a company, or somebody who came in, you know, like nowadays, that's, you know, oh, my hair is all messed up. Yeah. Nowadays, right, the selfie, right, is more of what's important. People want visual validation that you did something. So that's one way, is by displaying those accomplishments and things on your LinkedIn and on your personal website. You should have both. Then the other thing I want to say is that another way that you could really drive home what you're doing is writing out your RSO experience on your resume like you would a job. That's what I recommend to people, except if you are only a member in the organization, then that's different. But if you have a leadership position in there, you write it out. You put, like, I was the president of the National Society of Black Engineers, and you put bullet points and you put when and where you know, how long you were involved. And that's how you communicated, as this is a professional experience to me. This just isn't an RSO experience. And to even re-emphasize and or just emphasize, not even re-emphasizing, what the impact was that you had on that organization. So in your bullet point, including a number, a percentage, or a dollar sign. So if you did fundraising for your RSO, I helped to fundraise $600 for my RSO. If you helped to increase membership, I recruited 5 new members to this RSO, and really kind of quantifying the kinds of experiences that you're having in your RSO.
I really love that answer, because, you know, I work with a lot of student leaders, and just out of trust, they'll hand me their resume and ask for feedback. And something I often see is they'll just have like a little section at the end that says like involvement, and it'll just be like, you know, name of the fraternity president. I'm like, that is a whole section on your resume. That should be like a whole, the same as a job, not just one line at the very bottom, because that makes it feel like a throwaway a little bit. And so
Exactly.
I love that feedback. I feel myself saying the same thing to students often. I think you touched on it a little earlier, but I would love to hear a little more about, there is a real skill to be able to recognize your successes and your failures, and to be able to talk about them. I think sometimes students feel modest in talking about their successes and don't know how to answer that question of, tell us about a time that things didn't go well and what you learned from. Every interview has a question that sounds something like that. Tell us about a time you failed and what you learned from it. And both of those experiences can often come from the RSO experience. And so what are maybe some tips to our attendees on how you can package those in a way that doesn't minimize your successes and doesn't focus too much on the failure aspect?
So essentially, when they're asking you about times when you have failed, they're essentially asking you about whether they're trying to determine whether or not you have a growth mindset. I think is essentially what they're looking for, is one, and then also your ability to be accountable. So if you failed at something, being able to say, hey, you know what? I failed, it didn't go as planned, but the most important thing is highlighting what did you learn from that experience, not just that you failed, right? So what you might have learned was, I was going about something and it didn't end up working out. And what happened, I learned was one, I need to be a better listener and I need to be able to solicit feedback. So the next time, right? So what you do is not just share the failure, but share, okay, here's what I learned. And the next time when something came up, how I was able to adapt and make that successful, if that was if you had the opportunity to do that. So yes, your RSO, again, being able to tie in these experiences, it gives you really concrete details, or really specific ways that you can answer different types of interview questions.
Great. I'm going to recognize that we have 9 minutes left, and I want to encourage anyone who has questions to make sure they're putting them in the chat. And I also don't want to cut you off in case you have any other slides.
Yes, we do have a couple more slides.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so review your results, identify, and this is important for you because of what Marnie just asked. So it's important for you to know what your top 5 skill categories are, because now you have a way to answer that interview question. What are your strengths? So now you can say, oh, my strengths are in leadership. My strengths are in teamwork. And it's important that you use this language because this is, again, coming from our National Association of Colleges and Employers. They have done the work of sitting down together and saying, what are the things, what are the top skills, experiences that we want our students or future employees to be able to have? So you can use this language. Also, on that list of behaviors that they have that I kind of turn into like this little inventory is identifying what are your top 20 skills from all of that. What are the things that you can really say, I am confident 100% that I can prioritize, I can complete tasks, I can do those. Those are going to be super helpful for you, one, when you're putting together a resume, when you're writing your cover letter, and when you are going in for your job interview. So it's important that you do those now, because most times why people don't do well in interviewing is because they don't know themselves well enough. They don't know how to put a resume or cover letter together because they don't know enough about themselves. So now you all, by being here today, you're going to have a much better idea of who you are and also a much better idea of what your skills are. Next, identify what are your areas of growth. So what skill categories or individual skills do you still need to develop? That's really important because when someone asks you, what are your weaknesses? They're not asking you to come in and say, oh, like I tend to take on too much, or because why would I want to hire somebody who's going, even if that's true about you, that's okay. You don't need to talk about that. But always think about your areas of growth or your weaknesses in terms of a skill that you can improve. So let's say, for example, as I was interviewing for my job here at UNLV to be the assistant director, one of the roles would be supervising professional staff. So one of my weaknesses or areas for growth would be like I had not yet supervised professional staff. I had the experience of supervising student workers. I had supervised graduate assistants, but not anybody in a professional role. So when they asked me, like, what do you think is an area of growth for you? I said, well, one of the areas in which I need to grow still is this. And so I was specifically able to identify that and then talked about what were some of the ways that I was hoping to be able to overcome that weakness that I had, which was I planned on signing up for like the management leadership training academy that UNLV offers, right? That helps people to be better or more effective managers. So most times when we go into jobs, nobody ever gets hired with 100% of everything, but you understanding the nature of the job and being able to address, again, what skills categories you need to develop still is important because they know that they're not hiring unless you're super overqualified for the job. But most times for entry level or associate level jobs, they know they're not getting somebody who is perfect. So then I think this is my last slide. Well, not my last slide, but my last reflection piece is for you to think about how are you using your top skills in your RSO as a leader or a member? How have you demonstrated your skills in the RSO? And what new skills would you like to develop? And how could you use your involvement in your RSO to get there? So if you looked at this list today and you said, hey, you know what, like I really need to work on my professionalism. How am I going to use my RSO experience to develop those skills? And then how are you currently building new skills to help out your RSO? And then where can you continue to learn, build, and hold new skills? So if you want to take a picture or a screenshot of this so you can have it, and I'll also send out the slides. I'll share the slides with Marnie so she can share them out with you all today. But these are some things for you to reflect and for you to think about. So I definitely want to go to my last slide and then make sure I answer any questions that you all have. So some next steps that I recommend for you is to take the Red Bull Wing Finder. And the reason I recommend the Red Bull Wing Finder is because it's not necessarily a career assessment, but it's super helpful for you to be able to think and give you some more language around your skills and your experiences that you have in your RSO and being able to translate that into the work world. If you have not yet, please activate your Handshake account. That's always a big one that I like to remind everybody of. And then encourage everyone else in your RSO to also activate their Handshake account. Meet with a career coach. So, like I said, I'm available to meet with folks. Jonah is our peer career coach. And actually, I'll put a shameless plug for this. We're actually hiring 2 peer career coaches. So if anybody you know, or if you yourself are looking for a student job, we're hiring right now. You can actually apply on Handshake. The other one I wanted to talk about is using LinkedIn Learning. And this is super helpful for you. It's very similar to some of those certificate programs that I mentioned on from Google, but you could actually access this for free while you're a UNLV student. So you could use it to actually earn certificates and develop new skills that you might want to work on. So if you get a chance, just log in. You just need your ACE account to access LinkedIn Learning. The link is here. And then lastly, make sure that you bookmark our career toolkit. This is going to be super helpful for, I guess I'll just open it and share with you real quick. But make sure you bookmark this. This could be helpful to you and also to people in your RSOs. It just is essentially what used to be our career handbook that's now online. It just has basic 1- and 2-page handouts that you can use when you're putting together a resume, etc. So make sure you bookmark that. And then, oh yeah, this is LinkedIn Learning. You could log in here. You click on that link and it'll take you to log in with your ACE account. And when you check that out, you can actually go in here and browse what it is that they have to offer. So you can see these different categories: career development, customer service, leadership and management, professional development. So some of those skill categories I talked about today. If you want to work on improving your knowledge and skills with technology, you can also do that here. Honestly, this is a super useful tool for you. Any UNLV student can use this. I had a student who was actually interested in UX design, I believe. UX design. And so she was about to drop $10,000 on a course this summer so that she could develop these skills. And I said, show me what you're going to learn in that course, because I think you could actually do it for free here on LinkedIn Learning. And what she found out was exactly true, that she could actually do and learn more on LinkedIn Learning than she was going to pay in this course over the summer that she was going to spend $10,000 on. So please take advantage of this LinkedIn Learning software. It's here for you. You know, you're technically paying for this with your tuition and fees, so use it. You don't pay for your groceries and leave them at the store. So also don't pay for things at UNLV and don't use them. So make sure that you access LinkedIn Learning. And this is self-paced, so you could learn and do as much as you want on your own. And the cool thing about it is that you can earn badges too. So once you're done, and it'll automatically add that certificate to your badge so that employers or other people who are looking at your LinkedIn profile are going to be able to see your skills, etc. All right, so we're just about out of time. You can also find me on LinkedIn if you want to connect. I'm always happy to connect with folks on LinkedIn, so feel free to do that. But you can always email me as well if you need any help or any assistance with anything. What questions do you have in the time we have left?
So yeah, so as we wait to see if any last questions come in, I'm going to try to land the plane on a couple other items. So first, I want to say a huge thank you to Justin. This was such a good presentation. And I really hope that all of our attendees got some great information from it. I got some great information. I'm one of those individuals who really considers himself a lifelong learner. And so even though this is what I spend all day doing is focus on our student organizations, I even got stuff from today. So I want to say thank you hugely to Justin and to our attendees for being here. I want to note that we will post the recording of this presentation on our YouTube page, the Involvement UNLV YouTube page, and on the Involvement UNLV Instagram on our IGTV. So that if any of this information you want to hear back, you want to go back and do that self-reflection on your own with a little more time to yourself, you can go back and watch the recording. I'll also make sure in the caption for that recording, I include the link to the slides that Justin's going to send me. And any of the links that we included in today's presentation, because the chat box doesn't show up in the recording.
Okay.
And yes. And then I just want to shamelessly plug a couple things. One, I want to shamelessly plug our YouTube page. So this is our last of our workshops for the semester. But all of our workshops that we've done all year are posted on our YouTube page. And then I want to shamelessly plug a service from Career Services that they offer, which is they are happy to do presentations to your student organizations. I know they've offered that service many, many times. So if you're like, I want to do this again with the other students in my organization, or I want to talk about just specifically diversity, equity, and inclusion and how we better incorporate that in our organization in a realm that will apply to our future career. Whatever it is, or anything career related or job search related, internship related, that you think might be helpful to your organization. I've particularly seen a lot of our academic organizations utilize this, but any student organization can. I cannot recommend it enough, especially as we're coming into that point. We're getting to the summer where you all as student organizations are starting to plan, like, what does our fall look like? It's a great time to reach out to Career Services and try to see if you can incorporate any of those into your fall programming, whether they be an in-person something or a virtual something. You can work that out with them, but I just wanted to shamelessly plug something that Career Services always offers.
Yes, thank you so much, Marnie, for plugging that. Yes, I would love to come in, and hopefully we're back to in-person in the fall. I'd love to come in and do some interactive workshops with your group. Even if it's virtual, we try to make it fun and engaging and tailored for you all. So yeah, just let us know. Reach out and let me know.
Great. So to be respectful of everyone's time, we're going to go ahead and end it here. Thank you so much, Justin. Thank you all for being here. And we look forward to having you at a future program. Have a good one, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.